Alright, so welcome everybody again to week 13. I've already posted my introductory video, so hopefully you checked that video out before you looked at this video, but nonetheless, let's go ahead and go to week 13. And once you are there, my intro video explained all the assignments that were due this week. This video is dedicated strictly to explaining the research design assignment, so go ahead and click on that folder. Now, I suggest watching and, well, first of all, doing the assigned reading, the weekly reading, Research Designs for Writing Project 4. Read that first, and then watch the videos, and then after that, watch this video. So if you haven't yet watched the other videos or read, I suggest you pause this video and go back. Now, if you are in it for the long haul, then let me go ahead and switch over to the front cam here. There we are. It's not letting me see my mouse. And I'm getting it there. Give me just a second. There we go. I had to get my mouse to pop back up. Alright. So there's my big face. Okay. So, with this assignment, I'm just pulling up the website now. The first thing you have to do is in this project, let me get on the screen here. In this project, what you're doing, what your main focus is in Writing Project 3, you came up with this crazy idea. It's supposed to be something new that is in direct opposition with what most people tell you. So, regarding your topic. So if someone says that there's the popular belief, let's see how far I can go here. Well, I have a lot of writing space today. Alright, there we go. How far can I come back here? Great. Okay. So in Writing Project 3, if you came up with something, if most people said there's two sides of the fence to gun control. Most people are on one side that they're for it. I put a plus sign for that. So they're for it. Most people are saying gun laws. Okay, we need gun laws. That's what those people are saying. Now, if they are saying, if on the other side of the fence, people that are against it, in this case I put a minus sign, if they're against gun control, most of the time they say that, no, everybody needs a gun. We need to give most people guns and train them on it. So we'll say all guns. Now I understand that these are very drastic perspectives, but they're kind of the far left and the far right of the argument. But your job in Writing Project 3 was to what they call transcend that argument, to go above it. Think of something else that goes beyond the traditional argument, because everybody says either this or this. What do you say? What do you say is different? What are you bringing to the table that we haven't already heard before? So one of the things you might have said, and this is the example that I've kind of used across the board, so that's why I'm sticking with it. You might say that no, it's not all about gun laws or giving everybody a gun. No, what we need to do is not worry about that stuff. We need to increase the funding of police officers. So we'll play plus increased funding for police. Okay? That would be you transcending it. So you're saying, no, it's not that, it's not this. The real answer is this. And so a lot of times, you're not going to have a whole lot of information to back this up just yet. You're going to be making your own logical argument, and you'll be basically using past examples and saying, here's what happened in the past. Based on this, let's say in Missouri they have this much funding, and in Colorado they have this much funding. And Missouri has never had a mass shooting. Colorado's had like 5, so or probably more than that. But the big ones, like they go 5. So you can look at the increased funding as being the cause or the causation for the decreased mass shootings. And so you've suggested that, and you use outside information, past information, but in order for that to really become something that is proven true, in the research world, what you would have to do is propose a study. You would have to propose that you or someone else comes up and says, I'm going to do this in order to prove that this is there is at least a relationship here. Now, you can do that in many, many different ways. Some of the 4 ways that I've given you here. Let me get some spray here real quick. That's a terrible eraser. That's why this isn't working. My school gives me rags. They need more money in education. Let's see. Oh yeah. So I've given you 4. The very first one I'm going to give you is surveys. Now, I'm not going to lie. Most of the time people go with surveys because that's what they're familiar with. But in some cases, surveys aren't really going to do the trick. For instance, if you're trying to prove that increased funding is going to decrease mass shootings, the survey is not really going to do it. Because what a survey does is you ask a sample of people. Now, when I use the word sample, here's what I'm talking about. There's a sample of people. Let's say you got 5 people. 5 people is the sample. This sample represents the larger population. Now what this means is that there are 500 people, and that's like the entire population. So let's say that at your school there's 600 people, and now let's say there's 1,000 people, and you want to survey the entire population of females. So in your school, 1,000 people, 500 of those people are females, so that would be the entire population of female students. But you don't want to go around and you don't want to survey all 500 people. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a sample. Now without getting into too deep with what kind of sample we're going to need here, a sample number, like how did I come up with 5? Well, for me that's 10%. But generally speaking, the more people you can get in your sample, the more likely you are to have an accurate and truthful representation of the population. So if these 5 people, these 10% say, yes, I've been discriminated against. Yes, I've been discriminated against. 5 people. At the end of the day, what your study is saying is that these 5 people represent the entire population. So if all of them, 100% of these 5 people say yes, are you comfortable with saying that this represents the entire 500 person population? Basically what you'd be saying is that these 500 people are all going to say yes, they've been discriminated against. Are you comfortable saying that this small sample here is a small version of what this is right here? That's what you have to ask yourself. Most of the time, you can go with about 30. That's a very rough estimate. But for your papers, 30 will be fine. Because I don't expect you to go into population. You can have a whole entire class, a whole entire project on learning population. But I'll just go ahead and tell you, 30 is fine. If you want to do more, great. And you could easily justify it, because think about it this way. The more people you get in your sample, the larger your sample becomes. And the closer it gets to being the actual population. Like if you got time, by all means, go out and survey 500 people. But a lot of researchers just don't have that kind of time, and they don't have that kind of money. And so that's why they come up with a smaller population, or excuse me, a smaller sample. But you have to find a sample that you're comfortable with saying, yeah, that's going to represent everybody. Now, more likely what's going to happen is not all of them are going to say yes. It's going to be something like, let's say there's 10 people. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Just for the sake of easy math, I teach English, not math. 10%, there's 10 people, so now we're looking at a fifth, so 20%. You're wondering how I got that? It's 10 people, that's a fifth of that, so 20% is a fifth of 100, and it's a percentage. Anyway, 10 people is 20% of 500 people. Now with that, you're choosing a fifth of the population, and you might say something like 6 of them said yes, and 4 of them said no. Now because that's a 20%, that's a fifth, that's a pretty good representation of the 500 person population, okay? Oh wait, did I say 100? Okay, well, there's 100 people, sorry. I put 10, that would be like 2%. Let's go with 100 people. Strike everything I said. There's 100 people in your sample. That is 1/5 of the 500 person population. It's 20%. Now I got my math right. Like I said, I teach English. Anyway, 60 of these people said yes. 40 of these people said no. Were you discriminated against? 60% of them, 60 of them said yes. 20 of them, 20% of them, or excuse me, 40 of them, 40% of them said no. Now, I feel pretty comfortable saying that this is a positive representation of this. Basically, you're saying that 60% of 500 are going to say yes, and 40% are going to say no. Are you comfortable saying that represents that? In this case, I would be. Now, if you just had 5 people, probably not. If you just have that 1%, what is the likelihood that your findings are going to extend to all 500 people? Probably not very good, and it's all about accuracy with this. So anyways, the surveys are going to ask questions about what it is you're doing. So if you're trying to find out if increased money for police departments is going to decrease the number of mass shootings, surveys aren't really going to do it. What are you going to do? Ask somebody, hey, you think increased money to the police department is going to help? And some people are going to say yes, some people are going to say no, but ultimately they don't really know the answer to that. There's really no real proof. All you're doing is getting a bunch of opinions. What a survey would be good for is if you're trying to find out something about particular people. How many people in the world have been abused? How many people in your school have been abused? A survey would be, we'll say that's the question. And let's say that your topic is something like parenting techniques. Does a certain parenting technique create an abusive parent? So that would be like the parent has a kid, they use a certain parenting style, and then when this little kid grows up and has kids of their own, that parenting style that their parents did made them abusive. And it's kind of complicated, but that's just something crazy. Anyways, let's say that that's our topic. That would be our research question. Does parenting style X cause abusive parents? So what we'd be looking at would be like, this is grandma. This is mom. And this is daughter. 3 generations, right? Now, if the grandma used X to parent, so let's say that spanking was the big one. If X equals spanking, if the grandma spanked their child, spanked, which would be, in essence, your mom, was your mom now abusive because she got spanked when she was a kid? That would be the question. That's really what you're trying to find out. And so your survey would be have very many questions to it. It would have several, at least 10, 15, 20, so many questions. And if you choose to go the route of survey, I'm going to need you to tell me what those, create a survey with questions on it that tells me what you're going to ask your sample. So, in this case, you might go out there and say, how many of you guys have been abused? 500 people. If you go out to, if the population is 500, and you want to get 10%, you're going to go ask a sample of about 100 people. Now that's just, like I said, you guys are good with 30. If you want to do that, great, good for you. Now the sample's going to be 100. Great. You're going to go out and ask those people, how many of you guys have been abused? Let's say that 60% say they have been abused. That's question number 1. Of that 60%, they're then going to move on to question number 2. Was your mom or dad spanked? Okay, so this is kind of where we're going with developing this. We don't have to start thinking about these variables necessarily. You just need to decide this week, which one do you think is going to work for you? Because next week we're going to start developing it a little bit more. If you don't think that a survey is going to lead you on the right track, which in this case, this works, but if you were trying to find out if increased funding to police departments would decrease mass shootings, then this probably isn't for you. Luckily for you, there's 3 others that you can choose. So let me spray out my board. All right. So the next one, if you don't like surveys or they just don't work for you, the next one that you can do is a correlational study. Now what that is you're just trying to prove that there's a relationship, okay? I think the example in the video was every time there's an exam at the school or something, how many pizzas are delivered, or is there an increase in pizza deliveries from whatever pizza chain? And they showed that, well, it was an example, but in their example, they showed that every Monday, whenever exams were, pizza sales went up the night before because people were staying home eating and studying or whatever. Now that would be fine for a correlational study because basically what you have to do, first of all, you have no control. Now you'll see that in the video and it won't really make sense until you start looking at the causational and the experimental designs. But with this, the correlational study, you don't have control because really what you're doing is you're just looking at something and you're saying, are these two linked in any form or fashion? So this might work very well for the police and the mass shooting. So you're asking yourself, does increased funding decrease mass shooting? And what you could do is you could look at information that you've gathered from somewhere else. You could look at, say, Missouri and look and find out that they get, I have no idea how much police officer funding is. Well, let's just say it's like $100. Let's just say that Missouri gets $100 for their police department. They spread that dollar thin, okay? And of that $100, well, in Missouri, of the year of 2015, there was only one mass shooting. Okay? So they got $100, they only got one mass shooting. But then we look at, say, Colorado, and it turns out they only get $20. All right, great. They spread the dollar thin. But then you come out and you find out that they've had 20 mass shootings. So for every dollar they get a mass shooting, which that isn't funny, but that is almost accurate. So Missouri gets $100, and their $100 shows that the mass shooting they only got one, and then Colorado gets $20, but they have 20 mass shootings. So you can kind of see maybe there is a relationship here, and then you start looking at other states funding and other states mass shooting. So then you look at, say, Indiana. They get $50, and they've only had 10 mass shootings, okay? And then you look at maybe, say, Texas, just because we all know they don't have a whole lot of mass shooting. So we're going to say that they got a lot of money. They were going to say that they got $200, and they had 0 mass shootings, okay? So you can kind of start to see a trend in this data, and that's what we're talking about by correlation, because just by looking at the numbers, we're not controlling anything. So it's really difficult for us to prove without doubt that that is the answer. Like that money, increased funding is the answer. But we can show that there is clearly a relationship. No arguing with that. There is something going on here. Now, what is it that's truly happening? Well, it could be the fact of just more money, more cops, more patrols, less shooting. That could be the answer. But what it could also mean is that maybe Texas gets $200 and they're giving that money to the mass shooters and saying, don't shoot anybody because we're going to give you money to not shoot people. Now, of course, that doesn't happen, but that could be an alternative that says that this isn't the only answer. There could be a million different other things, and you don't have any real proof to say that this is the only answer, or in this case, the right answer. Another alternative might be that maybe Texas has, maybe Colorado has something in their drinking water that is causing people to go crazy and shoot everybody. That would have nothing to do with the money, and if that was the answer, well, then that proves that this isn't true. Okay, or that at least proves that this data doesn't really show anything, if that was the real answer. But just by the data, just from looking at this, it looks to me like there's a relationship. Granted, I made all these numbers up, but you get what I'm saying. Now, That is a correlational study. No control. That's a big one. So remember that there's no control on these, on the correlational study, because that'll become important when we talk about the experimental. Okay. Now, where are we? Causal. Now, the causal is you're looking specifically for the cause of something. Now, the correlational, we looked for the cause of something with the cause of the increased funding to the police officers and did that decrease mass shooting. But that was looking at a relationship. With a causal, you're literally asking, why does this happen? What is the cause? And you guys have all done something like this. You've done a causal research. You just haven't done a causal research study. But it's the same idea. You're literally just focusing on why does it happen. What is the cause of this? Now the last one, with the correlational, you just show that, yeah, there's a relationship. But you didn't say anything about why. Why does it happen? You didn't talk about that. You showed that it might be due to the increased funding, but you're not quite sure if that's true. The data showed that, yeah, there's probably a relationship, but you don't have any proof to say that, yes, that is in fact, definitely, without a doubt, true. Now the causational, that's going to help you figure out really what is the cause, what is going on here. You're looking specifically at effects, you're looking at causes and consequences. And again, no control. Now, this is where you're going to have multiple variables. Remember how in the correlational study we just had two? We just had the dollars and we had the mass shooting. That was just two variables, two things we were looking at. You're going to need a couple more than that in this one. So for the causational study, what you're going to be doing is directly observing some groups. Okay, so you'll directly observe, maybe say, what causes people to get an A in this class? You got two groups. You got the people that, I mean, you could literally break these up into any groups you want. But let's say that we're looking at, ethnicity, and you're going to break them apart by that. And you're going to say, how does ethnicity impact the likelihood of doing well in this class? You could look at Hispanic, African American, and white. Okay. You have three groups. Okay. Now, if you're looking at this, you're trying to. I got a pain in my elbow. You're trying to figure out what is it that can explain why these people either do well or don't do well. So you look at it and you find that 3 people out of 4 pass the class. That means there's 4 Hispanic people, and out of 4 Hispanic people, 3 of them pass the class. There are 6 white people, and out of that, 2 pass the class, and there are 2 African American people, and out of that, 2 people pass the class. So that means that the total class is made up of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there's 12 people in the class. Out of that 12 people, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 pass the class. And so you're wondering, what is it that caused these people to pass the class? So you're going to ask that question. What is it that caused these people? Let's say that we think it was culture. Did culture? That would kind of be your research question, maybe a little bit more detailed than that. But at this point, does culture impact success? At this point, you can kind of say that yes, it might. And you would say that something about white Caucasian people, something about their culture, says that they ain't going to succeed. You got to figure out what that is, though. So you need to come up with another variable. What is it about this culture that makes people less likely to succeed than the aspects of this culture? And you might say that, I mean, it could literally be anything. Let's say that they're tasting music. And then you look at that variable and you find out how many of those 6 people listen to whatever type of music. Let's say that they listen to folk music. How many of the 6 listen to folk? Well, it turns out that just 2 people of the 6 listen to folk music, and those 2 people were the 2 that failed. So then you can suggest, you can argue that if a white person listens to folk music, they're going to fail that class. And that is your cause of failing the class, or cause of not succeeding in this class. And so that's what we're talking about when we talk about causal. Now, we don't have control over these variables, right? We didn't have anything to do with this. We just looked at all the people in the class, and we broke them up into our groups. We could have said males and females. We could have said people from, you could have said, you could have picked literally anything. You could have said people with brown hair, people with red hair. You could have literally done anything. And then of those people, kind of taken it a step further and found out what are the variables that help a person succeed. What is the literal cause of what makes a person succeed in this class? That was how does culture impact success? What are the literal, what pieces of that person are causing them to succeed or not succeed? But you don't have any control over it. That's what brings us to the 4th design. Okay. Now the 4th design is a little bit unique, and mainly because, and that's called the experimental. The experimental design is unique because you do control the variable, okay? You do control just about everything. You're still asking the question, what causes? Or effects, or consequences, or whatever. Let's say that you wanted to see how, let's go back to that culture. Does culture impact success in English 102? Okay. Does culture impact success in English 102? Now let's say we got those same 12 people. We got 12 people. Excuse me, sorry. We are not going to have any people because we're going to be in control of it all. So if we wanted to find that out, we would have to be in control of the people that go into that class. We would be basically the registrar, and they wouldn't get to pick and choose, the students wouldn't get to pick and choose whether or not they get to go in that class. The registrar would say, or you in this case, because you're the study, you're the lead researcher, you're the person doing the study. You would have to go into the school and say, I want that person, that person, that person, and that person, because you're trying to build your own groups. You're saying, I want 12 people in the class. And of those 12 people, I want 6 of them to be white. White Caucasian, okay? And of the 12 people, after I take away 6 of them for being white, I want 2 of them to be African American. And then you're saying that I want the rest of them to be Hispanic. Because you're in control of all the variables, you get to pick and choose who is in your group. Let's say that you wanted to, I'm actually doing a study right now. And in this study, I'm finding out how video games impact the success of a writing student. What I've done is I've chosen 4 classes. And I said, I don't care who's in them. I just want 12 classes. Or excuse me, 9 classes. 9 classes. And in those 9 classes, I'm controlling the event. Because after this, after I get these people, then you have to figure out, what are you going to do to those people? Well, in this case, I'm just going to put them through English 102. But instead of just going through English 102, you know what I want you to do? I want you to all listen to folk music. Because I think that if you're a white person and you listen to folk music, you're going to fail English 102. That's my hypothesis. That's what I think. And in order to test that hypothesis, I'm going to control all variables, all phenomenons, all events, and I'm going to say, you go through my obstacle course, and I want to see how you do. You're basically developing what they call treatment. This would be your treatment. Let me give you an example of what I'm doing. Maybe it's a little bit easier. In my experimental study, I am taking 9 classes. I don't care who's in them, because I'm not too worried about anything about the students. I'm just worried about how they react to the treatment. My treatment is a video game called Reason Racer. If you want to, you can look it up on there. And every time you go to class, for the 30 minutes after class, I want you to play my video game. Immediately after class, you just leave the classroom, go to the computer lab, and play this video game for 30 minutes. Then, after you've played that video game for 30 minutes over the course of a month, now remember, I'm in control of all this stuff. That's what's unique about the experimental design. I get to control everything. And so if that's something that you need in order to truly show that your crazy theory from Writing Project 3 is correct, then this might be the route for you. Now, after they go there and they play for 30 minutes in a month, at the end of that month, then I'm going to test them. That's called the assessment. Actually, we can call it something better. I think it'll help. The measurement. I'm going to have them take a test, and it's going to be my test. I'm going to put it together, and I'm going to test them on things that I think the video game are going to impact them on. So I'm going to say, I'm going to give you a writing test. And in that test, you know what, I really don't worry about anything. I just worry about how well you organize your paper. And at the end of the day, from this treatment and from this measure and from these 9 classes, I'm going to be able to measure all 9 classes. So there's like 14 people in a class. What is that? Let me get my calculator. What is 14 by 9? Let's see. 14 by 9 is 126. Yep, that sounds familiar. 9 classes, that's 126 people. Now, if you remember from before, I had to look at the sample, right? I'm having 126 people in my sample. This is way back in survey. It still is kind of replicable here. But out of 126 people, my total population is like 2,000 because my entire school has 2,000 people. 2K to 2,000. Now, of course, I can't go around and have everybody first of all, take the English class, and I can't go around and make them all play 30 minutes versus video games after every English class that they are in. And then after that, I can't grade 2,000 essays. So 126 seemed like the most people that I could do because that's all of the students in English classes that semester. So I'm taking all 9 English classes, and I'm just measuring them. That's how I came up with my population, or excuse me, my sample, if you're wondering from before. Now, after that, I took these 126 people, I had them play the video game for 30 minutes for a month, and then I measured them. How well they do? Well, it looked like out of the 126, 90 of them increased their writing score. Or excuse me, 90% scored greater than 80%. So 90% of the people, 90% of 126, so of 126, 90% scored greater than 80%. The other 10% scored less than 80%. So I can comfortably say that this treatment is a cause for students to do better on their writing test. That's what the experimental does. You're experimenting. You have groups. You have groups that play the game, and you have these classes, and you may even have a couple classes that don't play the game. But nonetheless, you're in control of all of it. And that's really what the experimental design is really for. Is you're in control of all these variables, and you get to determine how are you going to put this together in order to prove what you want them to prove. Now, you might say that out of 9 classes, you had 5 of them play, but then you also had what's called a control group. Now you get to pick everything, and most of the time an experimental design has a control group. And that's something I forgot to say, that's why I'm working it in here now. Out of the 9 classes, 5 of those classes play. However, the other 4 don't play. So we can look at that and we can say, okay, out of the 5 classes that play, how'd they do? Well, they got 90% of them scored greater than 80. Now, how about those 4 people that didn't play? And this is where it really gets important. Because if you find that out of these 2 groups, the people that didn't play, if they also did 90% greater than 80%, like they scored greater than 80%, and it's the exact same as this, well, I'm starting to think that maybe this treatment didn't do as much as I thought it did. Maybe it didn't even do anything, because they both scored the same, and one group didn't even play the game. So obviously it wasn't the game that helped everybody reach that 90. However, what if you look at that and all of a sudden it's like, the 5 classes that did play the game, they got 90% above 80%, above an 80% score. So that'd be like above a B. But then you look at the people that didn't play, and now they're down to like 30% scored greater than 80% on the class. Now you might start thinking, okay, maybe that game did have some kind of impact on their grade at the end of the day. But because I was able to control that, that's what the experimental design allowed me to do. So nonetheless, whichever one you decide to go with, that's completely up to you. You have the survey, the correlational, you have the causational, the experimental. Now I know this is a long video, but obviously there's a lot to go over. For this week, I just need you to choose one of those and tell me how is that really going to tell you whether or not your crazy theory from writing Project 3 is legit or not. Because you look at this one, if I chose surveys here, and I said, yeah, I'll just give all 126 people a survey, see how they think they did, it's not really going to tell me much. Because ultimately, what's going to happen when you give that survey to these 126 people and they're like, yeah, I think I did great, and you get the test back and half of them failed? It doesn't tell you anything. That means that they all thought they did well, but did they? Well, obviously not. So you need to make sure you're using them all correctly. If you want to find out what people think, or if they're doing something that you can figure out by asking questions, by all means do it. But sometimes studies that you're proposing or things that you're trying to prove can't just be answered by surveying people. So make sure that when you explain whichever one you choose, correlational, causational, experimental, or surveys, whichever one of those you choose, make sure you explain to me why you're using it, because it has to be something that can actually answer your question. But other than that, that's all I have for this week. I realize that this is probably going to be a difficult week because we have some difficult content by there. And if you have troubles, by all means, contact me, Skype, email, phone call, or text. If you need something else, or if you're just not getting it, and that's just not cutting it, you have like this big crazy question, be sure to call me, and if you want, we can actually set up a Skype meeting, like a virtual meeting, online meeting, or whatever, and we can talk a little bit in person. I can kind of walk you through. Maybe if you don't know which one to choose, or if you're stuck between 2, let me know, because I can help you guys figure out which one to do. So with that being said, I hope everybody has a good week, and make sure that you contact me if you need to, and if not, well, good for you. This week, if this week was easy, then I am pretty sure the rest of the week's going to be pretty easy for you. But other than that, I'll see you guys next week.